Key thing, really, which is sort of COVID related, is what kind of London are we going to be in next year? And it feels to me that there's some fundamental challenge questions which we're all considering about how we live our lives, particularly in relation to the world of work and what that's going to become. We've got many of our residents here in Greenwich who would have gone into zone one and beyond on an absolutely daily basis. And I think that COVID has kind of broken the idea that we need to spend large parts of our life with our head stuck up someone's armpit on the Northern Line. And that's an acceptable way to live, because I just think people have now said, no, it isn't. That being said, I'm genuinely worried about, the mental health impact of just, kind of loads of people stuck at home, and recognizing the fundamental difference that, many Londoners have had in terms of their lived experience of what lockdown has been like. And for every it absolutely has not been, a wonderful world of Zoom meetings sat behind a well-organized bookshelf. For many of my mates and people that I talk to, it's been hell. Stuck on, the end of a bed in a bedroom, arguing with your housemates about, who can use the bandwidth of the internet to facilitate an important Zoom meeting. So I think there's a massive question for us now around workspaces. Clearly, there's a huge question about the central action zone in itself and what becomes of zone one. And I think, there's a lot in there. Certainly, I walked through London the other day. I finally managed to get a day out the office, and it was absolutely terrifying. I was at Cannon Street and I could hear footsteps on the platform, and it was haunting in that sense, of kind of the old London. And as much we need to get as much of the kind of nighttime culture and creative industries moving back as quickly as possible, and recognise, I suppose, where the balance can be had. Because certainly in the footfall that we were seeing in some of our town centres just before the second lockdown, there was a significant increase of traffic from people who were staying locally. And I guess that it presents really good opportunities for businesses, locally and in some of our town centres, who ordinarily wouldn't have seen, those kind of numbers on a weekday Wednesday ever before. How people are then kind of making the most of that, how our local economy is supporting people to live better, and how we, I suppose, as residents of this part of London, are invested in our local suppliers and local businesses is really important. So I think that is a challenge that we're all going to face in the next couple of months. And I don't want to make any bets about where that's going to go, because I think it is a really contested argument, actually. I've heard lots of lobbying from different organisations, and in some of the work I'm doing now in London councils as London Council's lead member for business and growth. The issues in central London and the central action zone as a whole are very real and substantial. The impact around aviation on job losses in the west of London is unprecedented. And we've got to really spend some time to get into that, to work out. I think build back better is a phrase that's now being bandied around a lot, but there's a genuine compassion and belief in there that actually we do need to build back better. We do need to make sure that we kind of take on board the things that we've all learned in COVID, and make a better London. And the thing I think I have most confidence about in terms of getting over those challenges is, even in the darkest of days, London is an evolving place. London does bounce back. London is resilient. It doesn't quite feel like that at the moment, but it's really important, I think, to recognise that where the city has had major challenges before, we will recreate ourselves, I think, in the context that we're going to find ourselves in.
In terms of your council house building programme, how do you see the challenge of resourcing that, of the challenge of capacity, particularly with Brexit coming up, but also all the pressure on council resources in any case?
So I think we've done well in Greenwich, and actually we're doing well generally across London, I think, by making sure that the people that we need to deliver the programmes, it isn't a kind of race to the bottom. Clearly, these are sort of scarce resources, but actually, kind of not overpaying individuals, not trying to peel everyone off and say, come and work here. I think people have done that very sensibly. We've also been making sure that we're working in our own local areas to get as many local businesses into the supply chain as possible. And certainly, I was talking to my director of regeneration earlier on about, just how successful that's been, not just from a local employment perspective, but also in terms of managing the impact of building locally. Change is always difficult. I get more people coming to oppose any housing they ever do, coming to speak up in favour of it. So actually, helping out Mrs. Jones next door with, a bit of a fence panel, because that actually makes it all look nice, is actually just a very small thing, but a really tangible example, I suppose, of being a good neighbour. I suppose all of the stuff around the cap and lifting of the cap has meant different things to different boroughs. For Greenwich, we were in a relatively strong position, so it has enabled us to borrow and to build. And I guess kind of moving forward, we now need to set out what our next plan and aspiration is around the next iteration of council housing in our part of London. And I think that workspace question is very much alive. I've been to see a few live work schemes before. Not always a great fan in terms of the space requirements, but certainly I think rather than having space which is all kind of located in everyone's house or flat, actually providing a workspace within the local environment where you can leave your property, go and do a bit of touchdown space, just for mental health and getting away from things. I think could be really, really interesting if we can make that work as a model.
I was going to ask you about how you look at the big tasks you got on in revitalising Charlton and Thamesmead, and how those have been changed by this sort of the new way that we're living and working. You partially answered that, but are you thinking again about the way that you're approaching schemes in those areas and elsewhere because of the results of the impact of COVID?
It's harder in Charlton and Thamesmead in a sense, because although we've got some land investments in Charlton, at this point we're not building anything. So actually, but I think we are talking to developers who are delivering there, and I think those things are absolutely right. I think what it has brought into sharp focus is what additional infrastructure you need above and beyond what you thought you needed, and perhaps what isn't so important anymore in terms of delivery. Certainly talking to Peabody down in Thamesmead, at the moment, and one of the significant issues that they've got is just the increasing amount of their residents that are in debt, that are then, carrying bad debts with them into their own properties, and the impact of that. And really making sure that we are supporting residents in the main. So we're really proud of the work we do with our Greenwich Local Labour and Business Scheme, which is about employment opportunities largely within regen, but not exclusively. We're certainly now trying to wrap things around that, around our welfare advice support services, access to food, the community hubs that people have set up, so that when we do get people falling through the cracks, we've got a whole system there to support them.